All right, so it's our ministry time. As I said, we're going to read Mark 5:25 through 34. Try to go through this fairly quickly. And a woman was there who had been subject to bleeding for 12 years. She had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and had spent all she had, yet instead of getting better, she seemed to grow worse. When she heard, though, about Jesus, she come behind him in the crowd and touched his cloak, because she thought in her head, if I touch his clothes, I will be healed. So immediately we see this woman knowing, believing if she could just touch the cloak of Jesus, she might be healed, she's thinking. Immediately her bleeding stopped. She felt in her body that she was freed from the suffering, and at once Jesus realized that the power had gone out from him. He turned around the crowd and asked, "Who touched my clothes?" You see the people crowded against you. The disciples were confused because so many people were touched and all around them. So they answered, "Yet you say again, 'Who touched me?'" But Jesus kept looking around to see who had done it. Then the woman, knowing that it had happened to her, came and fell at his feet and trembled with fear and the whole truth. He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has healed you. Go in peace and be free from your suffering." What a great verse. So this is accounted. They talk, Matthew, Mark, and Luke all record this miracle that Jesus did in the gospel narratives of the woman with the issue of blood. What an impression it must have made on each of them. And interesting to me that Luke, who was a physician, said no one can heal her in Luke 8:43, while Mark says she had suffered a great deal under the care of many doctors and spent all she had, yet instead of getting better, she got worse. The woman had this condition for 12 years. That's a long, long time. 12 years could probably seem like eternity to us today. 12 years of suffering with no hope in sight. In desperation, she turned to the only thing left, a miracle worker who was known as Jesus, who she had heard from that could heal any disease. Jesus' power must have been real, she thought, especially when she saw the synagogue leader falling at his feet, pleading for him to come to his home and heal his dying daughter. After spending all her money on physicians only get worse, she needed a miracle. She needed a power greater than men to overcome that obstacle in her life. She needed a mighty God. As she quietly pushed through the crowd, she came behind him through the crowd and touched his clothes. While only a mighty God can pull off a miracle like that, he gives us power to overcome, even when we feel to overcome by obstacles and problems in our life. In fact, every problem has a purpose, but every obstacle is an opportunity for God to show himself mighty to save. Isn't it? It's an opportunity to put our faith in God when we face obstacles. That's a great thing to know. Knowing that changes our perspective on our problems. I love the way Eugene Peterson paraphrases Jesus' words in the Message. You blessed when you're at the end of your rope, when less of there is more than God and his rule. Are you feeling at the end of your rope today or tonight? Are you actually in a good place where Jesus says when we reach out to Jesus in faith rather than trying to control every single part of ourselves and stressing out, we can experience the peace of God and power to overcome our biggest obstacle. But that's not all Jesus would do for the poor woman. He would also give her the power to overcome her greatest fear and her deepest hurt. According to the law in her day, she was considered ceremonially unclean. Everyone and everything she had possibly become ceremonially unclean. So this woman would have to be criticized by the entire community, including her family. She was prohibited from going to the synagogue to worship. But Mark tells us that when she touched Jesus' clothes, at once Jesus realized there was power going out of him. It must have been frightening her for her to do that. What would happen? What would Jesus do? She wanted to get in and get out without being noticed. Despite the crowds pressing on Jesus, he knew someone had touched him, and he felt a release of healing power. The crowd and even the disciples didn't realize that a miracle had taken place right in their midst. Without any fanfare or even a word being spoken, Jesus knows and responds when one of his children reaches out to him in faith. Mark tells us the rest of the story, that the woman, knowing that had happened to her, came and fell at their feet and trembled with fear, told him the truth. He said to, "Daughter, your faith has healed you." The woman experienced the perfect love of Jesus. It would drive all out her fears and replace them with peace. What about you? What is your greatest fear? Think about something that you might have fearful. Maybe you're afraid of heights or the spiders or this. I had God heal me of my fear of heights years ago by just standing in faith and saying that God has not given me a spirit of fear but of power, love in a sound line. So isn't it time to just drop at the feet of Jesus? Isn't it time to reach out to him and see what God can do in your life? As we look at this story, it should be encouraging of the faith that the woman here for 12 years with the issue of blood had, and how that could be you today or tonight as you reach out to God. So without further ado, we're going to play the song that this ministry time is based off. It is from the Christian band Petra. Again, one of those albums that just was so much, it meant so much to my life in the year 1993. The album Wake Up Call, which was the 14th studio album by Petra. And the album was one of the most successful. The band gathered and had them both a Grammy Award and a Dove Award. The album marked a dramatic shift in the tone for the band. The sound is more raw. There are fewer driving rock songs, and it concludes with 3 ballads, which one of them we're going to play for you. Just Reach Out. The words and music by John Slitt, as well as Rich Goatee also helped write this song. So without further ado, our ministry time song, Petra, with Just Reach Out. Just reach out to God and let him heal you and let him be a part of your life here tonight on Retro Rock Live.